and exemptions or exceptions to foreign sovereign immunity. Votes expected about 6:30 today. Our live coverage of the House now on C-SPAN.
Cultural Exchange Jurisdictional Immunity Clarification Act as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 285, H.R. 4086, a bill to amend Chapter 97 of Title 28, United States Code, to clarify the exception to foreign sovereign immunity set forth in Section 1605A3 of such title.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Berman, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 4086 currently under consideration.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shabbat, a leader on the Judiciary Committee, for introducing this legislation, and also want to thank Mr. Conyers and Mr. Cohen for their support as well. This bill preserves the ability of U.S. museums and educational institutions to continue to borrow foreign government-owned artwork and cultural artifacts for temporary exhibition or display. The United States has long recognized the importance of encouraging the cultural exchange of ideas through exhibitions of artwork loaned from abroad. Cultural exchanges produce substantial benefits to the educational and cultural development of all Americans. The future success of these exchanges depends on foreign lenders having confidence that loaning artwork to U.S. institutions will not open them up to lawsuits in U.S. courts. For 40 years, the Immunity from Seizure Act provided foreign government lenders with this confidence. However, rulings in several recent federal cases have caused that confidence to unravel. In these decisions, the courts have determined that the Immunity from Seizure Act does not preempt the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, which provides U.S. courts with jurisdiction in cases against foreign countries. The effect has been to open foreign governments up to the jurisdiction of U.S. courts simply because they loaned artwork to an American museum or educational institution. This has seriously threatened the ability of U.S. institutions to borrow foreign government-owned artwork. It has also resulted in cultural exchanges being curtailed as foreign government lenders have become hesitant to permit their artwork to travel to the United States. The bill addresses this situation. It provides that if artwork is granted immunity by the State Department under the Immunity from Seizure Act, then the loan of that artwork cannot subject a foreign government to the jurisdiction of U.S. courts under the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. This is very narrow legislation. It only applies to one of the many grounds of jurisdiction under the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. It requires the State Department to grant the artwork immunity under the Immunity from Seizure Act before the provisions of the bill apply. And in order to preserve the claims of victims of the Nazi government and its allies during World War II, the bill has an exemption for claims brought by these victims. If we want to encourage foreign governments to continue to lend artwork to American museums and educational institutions, we must enact this legislation. Without the protections this bill provides, rather than lending artwork to U.S. institutions, foreign governments will simply deny American loan requests. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill. And, Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shabbat, who is the author of this legislation and an active member of the Judiciary Committee.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank my colleague, the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Smith of Texas, for yielding the time, and he explained it much better than I can, but I'll make a stab at it myself. H.R. 4086 is really a straightforward bill which would better clarify the relationship between the Immunity from Seizure Act and the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. Since 1965, the Immunity from Seizure Act has provided the executive branch with authority to grant foreign artwork and other objects of cultural significance immunity from seizure by U.S. courts. The purpose of this was to encourage loaning and sharing exhibitions between U.S. and foreign museums. However, there is now a conflict between the Immunity from Seizure Act and the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act that has interrupted this friendly exchange. Essentially, a provision of the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act allows U.S. courts to have jurisdiction over foreign governments when their artwork is temporarily imported into the U.S., putting foreign artwork and artifacts at risk of seizure. Unfortunately, this has led in many instances to foreign governments declining to import into our country artwork and cultural objects for temporary exhibitions. In order to maintain the exchange of government-owned artwork and artifacts, Congress should clarify the relationship between these two acts, and this bill would do just that, ensuring that American museums like the Cincinnati Museum Center and the Cincinnati Art Museum, two in my district, can continue to enjoy international artwork and cultural artifacts. Enacting this legislation will remove a major obstacle to foreign loans and exchanges to American museums. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 4086, and I would also thank the gentleman from California, Mr. Berman, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers, for their leadership and their support in this effort, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas reserves.
Madam Speaker, we have no other speakers on this side. Now I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of the bill. I ask unanimous consent for leave to revise and extend my remark.
Without objection.
And I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, this bill arises from a tension between a 1963 statute providing foreign art collectors immunity from seizure and the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. It specifically stems from a 2007 court decision that broadened the expropriation exception under the FSIA and allowed for suits on artwork already immunized under the 1963 law. The Los Angeles County Museum of Art and other museums have made clear to me the chilling effect of that decision on artistic exchanges. This bill resolves the inconsistency between the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act and the 1963 statute and protects critical cultural exchanges. Specifically, the bill would clarify that foreign states are immune from lawsuits that seek damages for artwork that may already be immune from seizure pursuant to a presidential determination. I support this bill for several reasons. First, cultural and artistic exchanges are a powerful form of diplomacy that foster mutual understanding, and this bill would remove obstacles to such exchanges. Second, the bill is narrowly crafted. It provides sovereign immunity only in cases in which the President already immunized the artwork in question. Third, H.R. 4086 includes an exception for Nazi-era claims. This carve-out is consistent with long-standing American policy to seek restitution when possible for victims of the Nazi government, its allied governments, and its affiliated governments. I urge my colleagues to support the bill, while I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4086 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3992 to allow otherwise eligible Israeli nationals to receive E-2 non-immigrant visas if similarly situated United States nationals are eligible for similar non-immigrant status in Israel.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 282, H.R. 3992. A bill to allow otherwise eligible Israeli nationals to receive E-2 non-immigrant visas if similarly situated United States nationals are eligible for similar non-immigrant status in Israel.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Berman, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 3992, currently under consideration.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Madam Speaker, H.R. 3992 is legislation that was introduced by our colleague Howard Berman, which I have co-sponsored, and I appreciate his leadership on this issue. The Judiciary Committee approved this legislation by voice vote. The bill adds Israel to the list of countries eligible for E-2 visas. E-2 visas are temporary visas available for foreign investors. A foreign national may be admitted initially for a period of 2 years under an E-2 visa and can apply for extensions in 2-year increments. The U.S. has entered into treaties of commerce that contain language similar to the E-2 visas since at least 1815, when we entered into a convention to regulate commerce with the United Kingdom. Currently, the nationals of over 75 countries are eligible for E-2 status, from Albania to the Ukraine. In fiscal year 2010, over 25,000 aliens, including dependents, were granted E-2 visas. In the past, countries became eligible for the E-2 program through treaties signed with the U.S. However, in 2003, the Judiciary Committee reached an understanding with the U.S. Trade Representative that from now on, no immigration provisions were to be included in future trade agreements. As a result, specific legislation would be required to add countries to the E-2 program. In order to qualify for an E-2 visa, an investor has to have a controlling interest in and demonstrate that they will develop and direct the enterprise. In addition, the investor has to invest and put at risk a substantial amount of capital. This is measured by a proportionality test. The higher the cost of the business, the lower the proportion of its total value the investment has to represent. In addition, the investment has to be large enough to ensure the investor's financial commitment to the enterprise and that the investor will successfully develop and direct it. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3992, and I again thank my colleague Congressman Berman of California for introducing a common-sense bill that helps spur job creation and economic growth here at home and also invest in our relationship with one of our closest allies. The investments and business enterprises fostered by this bill benefit the economies of both the United States and Israel. And they also will create jobs and strengthen the already strong friendship between the United States and Israel. Madam Speaker, I'll reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 3992, a bill that places Israel on the list of countries eligible to receive E-2 treaty investor visas, and yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking Chairman Smith for his strong support of this bipartisan legislation and for moving it quickly through the Judiciary Committee and to the floor. And I'd also want to thank, along with Chairman Smith, Chairman Gallegly and Ranking Member Lofgren of the Immigration Subcommittee, as well as Chairman Ross Leighton of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their support and authorship of this legislation. This legislation will encourage further investment by Israeli business leaders in the United States and lead to the creation of more jobs for American workers. The scope of the legislation is narrow, but at a time when so many Americans are looking for work and families are struggling to make ends meet, every little bit helps. Israel is one of our closest allies and a leading investor in the U.S. economy. H.R. 3992 will further strengthen the bonds between our two countries while helping to create U.S. jobs. There are many hundreds of Israeli companies present in the United States and hundreds of U.S. companies doing business in Israel. E-2 treaty investor visas will enable the business communities in both countries to expand their bilateral investment flow. Currently, there are over 75 countries whose nationals are eligible for E-2 treaty investor visas. These nations range from Albania to Togo to the United Kingdom. This bill adds merely one country, which is already a significant business partner and contributor to our economic strength. We should be doing everything we can to bring additional Israeli innovations and technologies to the United States. Israel is an incubator of entrepreneurship, already a global leader in security and defense technologies, medicine, agriculture, and clean energy. Our nation will benefit greatly from bringing their innovations and scientific advancements to our shores. It would spur investment to introduce new products to the U.S. market. Recently, a Tel Aviv biotechnology company developed an advanced cell therapy product that has been used in Israel to achieve a drastic reduction of the mortality rate in patients with deep wound infections. The company invested in an FDA-approved facility in the United States that is engaged in the clinical production of cells. This Israeli biotech company needs to temporarily transfer one of their executives to the United States to develop, direct, and to oversee local manufacturing to ensure a successful operation. An E-2 treaty investor visa would facilitate this process and allow other Israeli entrepreneurs to explore similar business opportunities with the confidence and assurance that they will be able to monitor their investments. By passing this bill, Israeli investors are one step closer to expanding their business to our country and creating jobs for American workers. Israel is a trusted friend and a special ally, and this legislation expands business opportunities that will provide economic benefits for both countries. I urge my colleagues to support its passage. I ask unanimous consent that the remarks of the ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee, Ms. Lofgren, be included in the record.
The gentleman's request will be covered by general leave.
Thank you. And then I reserve the balance of my time. Oh, I'd be happy to yield to the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. And
I thank you, Mr. Berman.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for how much time?
I yield him such time as he may consume.
For such time as he may consume.
I want to thank the gentleman for including my remarks in the record, and I'm glad that we can make this change of bringing together these deserving countries. And I hope the bipartisan efforts coming from the Committee on the Judiciary, from both Chairman Smith and from Senior Member Howard Berman, will be a foundation to consider additional immigration reforms that are desperately needed to help families and businesses across this country. And I thank the gentleman for yielding.
While reclaiming my time, I can only say from your lips to thank you very much, and with that I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we have no more speakers on this side, so we're ready to yield back the balance of our time if the gentleman from California doesn't have any other speakers either.
Madam Speaker,
the gentleman from Texas yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Parliamentary inquiry. I would like to introduce the entire statement of Ranking Member Conyers and Ranking Subcommittee Member Lofgren into the record. I was unclear whether I'm able to do that at this time.
The comments are covered under general leave.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3992? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being...
Madam Speaker, I request the yeas and the nays on this bill.
Being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed.
Okay, thank you all. Thanks.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until 6:30 p.m. today.